Good. How are you?
Good. Is Sacred on or no? Sacred muted.
No, I'm on.
I can't hear him. Can you hear him?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just not used to
Oh,
this
there
talk,
he
guys.
is. Sweet.
What's up, guys? So let me do a quick introduction. I know Sacred's been on the show before. He's pretty well known out there. And Bazgrim, you're pretty damn well known as far as what you're doing to get the Pantheon hype out there on the forums and your YouTube side and everything else. So first of all, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
In this hour, maybe hour and a half, something like that. Now, it's not going to go more than an hour and a half. We promised, okay? So we're shooting for an hour. If we geek out and carry it over to 15 minutes, 20 minutes past, that's what happens. But so anyway, Bazgrim, Sacred, welcome to the stream. Again, I kind of told them what we're going to be doing. We're going to be dissecting that interview. I posted a link earlier so those guys can follow that. And so, yeah, basically we're going to be dissecting that interview and picking out a few key topics that we wanted to talk about. And I think to lead off tonight, what I'd like to do, if you guys want to spend 2 minutes of your time, Bazgrim, if you want to start off, tell me about how you got involved with EverQuest, first of all, and how that all transpired to get into how you're hyped up about Pantheon today. If you don't mind starting that off.
Yeah, sure. So I actually started playing EQ when I was 5 years old. My grandmother, actually, of all people, was the one to introduce the game to me because her son, my uncle, introduced the game to her. And so then it kind of became like a family affair for us. And there was like 6 or 7 of us, actually, just all in my family that would all play together. And that was pretty much my childhood. I spent a lot of time doing that, a lot of great memories. That went on for quite a while. And then obviously, as time goes on, experimented with other games. And it's pretty much the story that we hear over and over again about how none of the other games lived up to what EverQuest provided. And so it was just kind of bouncing from game to game to game, genre to genre. And and pretty much when I thought like all hope was lost for MMORPGs, I stumbled upon Pantheon. I felt very fortunate to have found it so early on, which is it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because you get really excited, but then you realize that you have to wait so long before you can actually play it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I knew that coming across a game that early was a really unique opportunity, and it's been great to get so involved in the community. And I'm just really optimistic about everything where the game's going. So yeah, it's gonna be a good journey.
All right, awesome, man. Hey, Sacred, how about you youngsters?
What was the question again?
Shit.
No, for me, it's one of those things where I grew up in a household with a stepfather who gamed, and he got me into playing games at an early age. Got my first computer, and then all of a sudden, I think that was actually my first computer and EverQuest kind of came about the same time for me. So that was really my first, PC game. And then from there, I just kind of fell in love with the MMO genre. Took a lot of years playing EverQuest, a lot of years playing WoW, and I got out of that because I got to a point where I didn't really feel like I was connected with the community. I didn't really feel like I was doing anything important or that was worthwhile while playing each night. And I've been looking for another game ever since then. And it kind of happened to stumble across, in 2016, I happened to stumble across Pantheon after, EQ Next decided it was going to shut its doors. And it was kind of it was a disappointing time, but it was kind of a happy time as well, because I think even with what I saw in EverQuest Next, I've seen more of what I actually want in Pantheon now than I ever did in EverQuest or think about in EverQuest Next. So, I'm very kind of just happy that all that came about, even though at the time it wasn't, what I wanted. It actually ended up being a little bit better for me in the end. So that's kind of how I short story, our long story made short there. That's kind of how I got rolled into it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's funny how we all found this path, right, to get where we're at. And you mentioned EverQuest Next, and my chat always goes nuts. But I was one of the guys that flew to Vegas. I was there, and one of my good friends couldn't even go with me. I ended up going by myself. But I had a great time, and man, it was hyped up and everything. And we all know what happened there, right? I always say that. And so it's real easy. And like a lot of people out there are really hesitant about Pantheon. They're like, Pantheon, how could this be the one, right? But you know what? They're really holding true to course, and I mean they're making a live product, and you can see the progress in the streams they do and things like that. So I mean it's going to happen. It's an exciting thing. So cool. That was good. Thanks for the introductions, guys. Now let's get into the meat of the whole thing, right? Bazgrim, going to pick on you. We're going to have you go first.
Sure.
What are some of the key things you liked in that interview that you wanted to pull out and talk about? And before we get any further, everyone in my stream as well, go ahead and form some questions up if you've had time to read that. Also, just throw some questions and we'll have try to answer that toward the end. But Bazgrim, let's see what you got to say.
Sure. Well, first of all, as some people know, I was at TwitchCon, and I know you were. That's where I met you, Pyye. And so it was kind of cool to be able to read this interview that took place at TwitchCon, because I witnessed firsthand seeing Brad and Corey get interviewed by tons of different media sources. It seems like they were always getting pulled aside for interviews, and so this was just one of many. So it was kind of good to see both sides of it. But anyway, yeah, I guess I'll just kind of like go through the article in order and just kind of point things out that I was kind of thinking as I was reading. So he kind of starts off talking about how what Brad's journey has kind of been like, not only back from EverQuest because he's just been in the industry for so long, but also kind of going through Vanguard and how that didn't really live up to expectations, and the kind of the disappointment that that caused, and then how to turn that around now, bring that into Pantheon. This is a story I've heard several times. I think Brad kind of gets asked this question a lot, but the story never gets old because I think it's a really inspiring story. And I have just so much respect for his ability to learn from his mistakes and apply that new knowledge moving forward. And that gives me so much more hope that, Pantheon is going to be what he says it's going to be. I really like the way he solves problems. I really like the way that he's honest and transparent. And so I think it's just always, like I said, it's always inspiring every time that I hear that story. And so that from there, he kind of goes into to talk about how he doesn't believe that this notion that the younger generation doesn't want a new MMORPG. Because you were talking a little bit earlier about how a lot of people are kind of like skeptical when it comes to MMORPGs. And as a member of that younger generation myself, to hear him say that really resonates with me, because obviously I do want this new MMO really badly. And maybe it's a little different because, like I said, I started playing EQ when I was 5, and I know that's not really a normal thing. But I think the point still stands, because as he says in the article, at the heart of Pantheon is challenge and having to overcome those challenges working as a team with your friends. And that core concept is an aspect that is also at the heart of a lot of other games out there right now that are really popular, especially with the younger generation. Like right here on Twitch, there's just tons of games that, if you really think about it, have a lot of the similar elements. So if Pantheon is then presented in the right light, it can, I think, and Brad thinks, that it can easily attract a large portion of that younger generation. And that's basically why they were at TwitchCon, because Twitch is a really powerful platform, like I said, for reaching different audiences. And I just think it's really smart that VR decided to be very deliberate about connecting with streamers, especially this early on, so that, you know, they can kind of collaborate to get the word out and explain to people what the game is really about, to try to kind of fight against those assumptions that I was talking about that people have, you know, so that people don't just hear the term MMORPG and just go, oh, you know, genre is dead, I'm sick of it, blah, blah, blah. If you really take the time to really explain to them what it is and show how Pantheon is different from these games that they might have been hurt by in the past, I think you'll have a really easier time getting that message across. And like I said, again, it was really cool to be able to see that firsthand at TwitchCon.
So
yeah, I think, thank you, Baz. Sacred, what's your chime in on that?
All right. So my voice is like not killing it or not feeling it right now, but and I also make the rookie mistake of I never use push to talk, so I save my so I'm trying to work a keybind out here. So give me a second. I'll let you go ahead, and then I'll go from there.
You got it, man. You can blame me on that one, okay? All right, so when I read through the article, I went through and I pointed out some highlights I thought were pretty interesting that, you know, in reading it quickly, you might, maybe they don't look at it as maybe that big of an impact. But so let's talk about a couple of things in the article, right? So Brad and Corey, they're both kind of chiming in on their 2 cents on the situations, but a couple of the things that really stand out to me are they're designing this game to be designed around 2 to 3 to 4 hour sessions, right? They want you to feel like in a 2 hour, maybe even 3 hour session, that the average person can accomplish something. They can leave the game and feel accomplished, right? We already know it's going to be a difficult game. You know, it's not going to be a game that you can just breeze through. You're going to need teamwork, you need coordination. But I thought that was really cool that they go into it with the mindset that you know, because look, a lot of us are in the same situation. I don't have the time that I used to have back at EverQuest when I played it for 10 years to literally play 12, 14 hours a day. I mean, seriously, yeah, we were geeky. That's what some of us did back then. Trust me. But, hey, and I'm not saying I wouldn't want to play it that long. I'm just saying it's cool that they're designing it to where, let's say you get off work at 5 o'clock and, you know, you wind down about, you get on the game around 7. Well, by 11 o'clock or maybe 10 o'clock, you're going to accomplish something and feel pretty good about it. So that was one thing I thought was pretty cool that they're designing it around that. Another thing, and I'll just pick out pieces here, you know, they talk about it's a game where, you know, it's situational gameplay, right? Which is cool because situational gameplay, it's very hard to design. It takes a lot more thought and it takes a lot more planning. And let's describe what situational gameplay is. It's a little hard to say. So group, right? You're relying on a group, right? So group synergy, you got to do things that require other players. So it increases the socialism of the game, which MMOs nowadays, they just, you know, when you're playing an MMO, I won't pick on any MMOs, but I mean, you just breeze through it. You know, you don't sit there and get to know anybody. You know, you can do a fast pickup group and literally no one ever says anything unless they're trolling you and they throw a few cuss words in to be cool. It's just different. It's not the same. What this game, you're gonna have to have good reputation. You're gonna have to rely on each other, and that's really cool. The conditions, the area, you got to take into consideration all these things when you're planning out a successful dungeon crawl or whatever it may be, but you got to consider the area, you got to consider the conditions, the NPC types, you know. They're not getting into a lot of specifics, but you know, there might be situations where you got to switch out certain gear. You got to have the right weapons, you know, blunt versus bladed or whatever, depending on what type of creature you're going to fight, what they're immune to. And then lastly, you know, the conditions of the area itself. You know, they have, 7? One of them's called Gloom. And then on top of that, this is one of the things I found that I thought was really interesting. One of the things he talks about in this interview that is not brought up a whole lot. It's really not. It was brought up early on, which really excited a lot of people. And then everyone chimed in about their, you know, I'll just tell you what it is. So so on top of the 7 conditions, and I don't think this is one of them, they're talking about zones that are going to have complete darkness. Complete darkness is going to work against you if you don't have lighted sources, either from class abilities or torches or some kind of light source. I'm telling you, when you walk into these places, supposedly you can't see anything around you. Like you can't see the hand in front of your face kind of thing. And talk about how scary that's going to be. Let's say it's a dungeon. You're going to hear all the noises. You're going to know there's monsters in there and stuff. There's going to be a death penalty. You don't want to die. So it's really going to bring fear into that situation, I think. And that's exciting, right? I think that's cool. So you're going to have to prepare to get into something like that. And, you know, I'm hoping they can design it in a way where they can't get around it with gamma corrections and things like that. I'm not the smartest programmer in the world. Wish I was doing it. But I'm sure hopefully they'll find a way where they can keep it nice and dark and there's no cheating by, you know, adjusting gamma and things like that. So that was another thing I thought would be pretty cool. Let's see if I have... the other thing they mentioned too is the player-driven economy, right? A couple points about that is they really want it to be a dynamic marketplace. So a couple things when you talk about crafting, the crafters they're gonna be specialists, but they're gonna have to rely on the adventurer to go out and get all these materials that are gonna exist in the overworld, right? Which is pretty cool. Now they can go out and try to do it themselves, but it also gives the adventurer a means of giving back to that, you know, marketplace, right? They talked about, you know, being able to buy off vendors and creative things that used to be back in EverQuest. I just think how that ties in the adventurer and tying in with the crafter, the adventurer relying on the crafter is going to be a pretty cool mix. And I think they're really going to do it right. We don't know a lot about crafting yet. Baz, maybe that could be a future show, because I know you're into that too. I've got a bunch of people in my chat right now who are totally into crafting. So we can't wait till that comes out. And then, you know, I think lastly, the one thing they talk about is, you know, the player dependency. We talked about it before, but it's such a big difference between this game and other games that, you know, every single interview they do, they talk about how class are going to have unique abilities. One class is not going to be able to do it all. They're going to bring back the chat system, you know, where that's your main means of communication, which, you know what, I'm totally fine with it. Don't get mad at me when I say this, everybody out there, but you know what, it does ruin a little bit of immersion for me when I'm got a headset on and people are burping and eating chips and stuff on a Discord channel. You know, it just kind of takes away the moment for me, right? So, I mean, I do like the old chat. I do like some of that kind of communication, and you just kind of let your mind go while you're playing and you get into the game. So anyway, those are some highlights I pointed out that, you know, of that interview I thought were pretty interesting. And so hopefully you enjoyed some of those topics. But Sacred, is your voice ready to go now?
Yeah, I think so. We'll give it a shot. So I did want to go back to one thing that Baz brought up, which was the younger generation not really looking forward or wanting a game like this anymore. You know, for me, I was young as well when I started playing EverQuest. I was 11, so not quite 5, but you know, I was there. But for me as well, one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of my friends that didn't start in MMOs as early as I did, even at my age, you know, around 30 years old, you know, you have a lot of people who have never experienced any sort of MMO like this. They've never experienced that old school feel to an MMO. they've only experienced things like WoW, they've only, Final Fantasy, things like that, where it's a completely different game. It's almost as if you're playing just an RPG that you could play on your PlayStation or Xbox by yourself. And you just happen to run into other people as you're running through the land. But, they've never experienced where it's a true group-centric game where you really have to rely on other people and you really have to have their help. And, that's something that for me as a kid, when playing this game, or EverQuest, when playing a game like this, I can tell you that I continued to find more and more friends as I went through the experience. And for me, that was part of the entire experience. That was what made it so much fun. That's what, really drew me in, was the fact that I was meeting people on a nightly basis. And I was, continuing to make new friends, or to grow a bigger relationship or a closer relationship with the ones that I had, because I depended on them. They had their role, I had my role. And, even as a young kid, I was playing with, adults in their 30s, in their 40s. And we had a good relationship. We had an online gaming relationship where we were friends. We were legitimately friends, and that was really something neat to me, because they treated me as one of the equals among the group, even though in reality we were nowhere close. So again, that was an experience for me, and it's an experience that I've not had in another game since then. And I played a couple other MMOs, but WoW being the primary one. But I have a lot of friends that have played WoW as well, and every time I bring up an MMO, or bring up Pantheon, or what it's going to be like, or what they should expect it to be like, in my mind, they can't really comprehend it. They have nothing to relate to it. They have nothing to really, back what I'm saying with, and they have no experience in that sort of game. So I don't think people can accurately judge what the younger generation want, because I know as for me, being a younger generation, when EverQuest came out, this is exactly what I wanted. This was, the thing that drew me in, the thing that kept me up late at night. And this was the thing that really made it so that I wanted to keep playing again and again and again. And this is a guy who grew up on first-person shooters and things like that. I never played any RPG games, never, I was never into that sort of thing. But EverQuest took me, in ways that I'd never expected. I put down my first-person shooter games, and, I was dedicated to them, but I put them down and I never touched them again, more or less. Until I got tired of playing, other MMOs that just couldn't hold up to what EverQuest did for me. So when I go back to looking at that younger generation, I don't think they've experienced an MMO like this, and I don't think they can accurately say whether they want something like this or not. Do they want another WoW? No, I agree with that. They don't. Do they want another one of the single-player MMOs we have out today? No, I agree they don't. But do they want a group-centric game that really provides a good balance of challenge, as well as that risk versus reward factor? A game that's really going to push them to think on their own, and not just give them a handout, give them a guide, point them in the direction, and tell them to go do this, go do that. I'm in the boat of, I think people want to actually have the feeling that they're in control of their own destiny in the game, and not just being kind of led by a rope or guided by the hand through a game, which is what it feels like to me in a lot of MMOs nowadays. So all the things that you pointed out, I absolutely agree with. But I have to say, and I'm just going to go to the biggest one for me, because I think this one really stood out to me more than anything, which was when they talked about, they actually brought up a question, will there be housing in the game? Now, housing isn't what I want to point out, but it's what Brad mentioned when he's talking about this, which is, sorry, my voice is about to hit the road, which is, they don't want to overwhelm themselves with goals. They mentioned that, and that's part of the deal with Vanguard. And I might be getting the question that they asked for that wrong now that I'm looking at it. But I was just looking at it, and I lost my track when I was talking. But okay, so one of the questions Brad's answering, he mentions that in past games they've really been ambitious about what they want to do, and they put some very lofty goals out there, and they've tried to do just too much too quick. And one of the things that he's bringing to the table with that experience, with that knowledge, with that know-how, is he's looking at the core foundation of the game and saying, let's get it right. And I think that's something that we've not seen in a lot of MMOs here recently, or even in the last 10 years at least, where someone has taken the time to say, let's get it right on release. Let's put the foundation, the fundamentals in there, and let's make sure the game's fun, and then let's build on it. And I think nowadays we see games like WoW that have been out there for it's been 13 years now. So you look at WoW and you're like, well, every game should have what WoW has in it, or every game should have what EverQuest 2 has in it, which again is 13 years. Every game should have what this game has in it. Well, those games have been developed for years and years and years by hundreds of, if not thousands of individual developers. They're massive in what they've done and what they've been able to accomplish. Don't get me wrong, MMOs that are out there still surviving today have done tremendous work over those years and put a lot into the games. That's been fun, and it's really kind of set the bar at a different level. But they didn't start there, and I don't think any MMO should ever be expected to start there. So, that's for me. That's the big thing that I look into. By the way, Baz, your keyboard's really loud.
Oh, my bad.
No, you're good. But that's the thing for me. When I look at MMOs nowadays, are they starting with the mindset that they've got to get the game in a place where they can build upon? They don't need it all. They don't need 14 years worth of work to come out in the first year. It's just not realistic. They're never going to get there. But what they do need to do is build that core game and let us work ourselves into the game and mature with the game. And then over the course of, however many years that we're playing this, whether it be 10, 20, who knows at this point. I know EverQuest, nobody thought they'd be playing that still today when it came out in 99. But, like I said, we're looking at MMOs as being a 20-year experience now based off of what the standards are. So when Brad talks about pacing himself, about having 10 years worth of game content that they're already planning out, to me, that's probably the most exciting thing that I've heard about out of anything, out of any interview. Now, we've heard this before, but it's just kind of confirmed and re-highlighted for us here, which is we're starting out slow, and we're going to allow players to build with the game, to mature with the game, to grow with the game, to really feel like they're involved in this entire process and not just coming into it and it's all there and that's it. You're basically going to get some level expansions, maybe some new spells here or there, but nothing special. No, instead he's saying we're actually going to continue to add on to the game, not increase the level cap, but add on to the game horizontally to make it where even when you're at that level cap, you could still have other things that come into the game or introduced into the game that will expand what you're able to do currently without having to worry about, a new level cap maybe or something like that. Things like that, in my mind, are what I'm most excited about. Just hearing that we have 10 years worth of thoughts going into the game today, and the game's not even released. They're planning for that 10-year path right now. Makes me think the game's going to scale, it's going to grow, and it's going to be something that's enjoyable for that entire amount of time. So, for me, that was what I really pulled out of this. I loved the darkness. I love the fact that they're talking about being group-centric, and I love that they're talking about bringing back some of those key roles in the game and really putting some emphasis on making sure that players get to feel like they're a part of the team and not just kind of a sidekick to what the team's doing because everybody else can do their job just as well as they can. So, for me, there was a lot of things in this that really weren't new information, but it was just, re-highlighted to us as players and as fans of Pantheon that, this game is here for the long track, and that's exciting to me. So I'll let, y'all want to add on to that at all, or?
Yeah. Just kind of bouncing off some of the things you were talking about earlier, like how so much of the quote unquote target audience of Pantheon is, they have families and responsibilities and stuff now. And so it's really important that you not feel like you have to dedicate 8, 10, 12-hour days to make progress, and that they're kind of designing around these 2-hour sessions. And now some people, when they hear that, they'll be like, how can you have a hardcore game that's designed around 2-hour sessions? But I don't think that those two play styles are mutually exclusive, because really the important the key is that you just feel some sort of sense of accomplishment after 2 hours. It might be really minor, but all that really matters in order for you to psychologically want to keep playing that game at the end of the session. You need to feel like some part of your character is better than it was than you started. You know, as long as you have that, people will want to keep playing and people will be happy, you know. But at the same time, you can still have those people that do put in those long sessions, and there still be enough content to keep them happy for long enough. So I think it's really good that they're kind of taking that approach. You know, they've been pretty clear from the beginning that it's still a relatively niche audience in the grand scope of things. You know, it's not going to be all things to all people, but you know, as good of a balance as they can get, I think they're really trying to strike that balance and find that really fine line to kind of allow you that flexibility in play style. You know what I mean? So yes, definitely, I definitely agree with that. And
can I ask you a question about that, Baz?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I heard the 2 hour sessions, you know, in previous nights and conversations with, or just in previous information that we've been passed, you know, through Pantheon forums and such, when I heard about, you know, really focusing on those shorter sessions, allowing people to feel like they've accomplished something, I had no idea how they were going to do it. I heard it and I was like, how is that really going to happen? And one of the things that I read in here was having like a safe log out, you know, spot inside of a dungeon. And that idea never even occurred to me. I never thought of it because in past games, I've never seen that. I've never experienced that. You know, in EverQuest, if I logged out, yeah, I might find like a corner in like the very edge of somewhere and log out and just pray that there's no roamers coming when I log back in the next night. So hearing that they're actually planning for something like that, I was like, it's starting to make sense to me now. I'm starting to understand how that's going to come about, because before I was skeptical. I'll be honest with you. I was like, man, there's no way I'm going to spend 2 hours getting in there and then I'm going to have to spend 2 hours getting out, or just die and take the loss. So I like that. I thought that was really something. I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and you add on top of that the you know, the amount of time that it takes you to even form a group in the first place. You know, I know that's another process that they're trying to kind of expedite. You know, you can still have it be social and still people have, you know, just typing in the out of character channel to, you know, find groups. You know, there doesn't have to be like a automatic group finder where you just click a button and it sticks you with some random people on your server. You can still have it be social, but have it still not be like, you know, it just took me an hour and a half to find a, you know, a complete group, and now, you know, I need to leave in a half an hour, so now we're not gonna be able to get anything done. You know, that those sorts of things that you can kind of work out those inefficiencies to really get, you know, to the gameplay that people, you know, actually want, the fun, like, adventuring aspect of things. So yeah, there's a lot more that goes into that than it may seem. But anyway, one thing that I just remembered that kind of popped out to me, slightly changing subjects, was when they were talking about how, like, how each of the races are different and how they're more of a cosmetic choice. Brad mentioned like the possibility of ogres not being able to fit in certain small places, which I think is something that is not really talked about very often, at least not from an official standpoint, because so initially my thoughts when I hear something like that are going to be like a shrink spell. Like, I know that they had an EverQuest, I think it was a shaman spell that would shrink you down so that you can fit into small places, and that like increases, that's another way to increase interdependency. So, you know, if you're an ogre and you're trying to get through some tiny door or whatever, you need to find a shaman that can shrink you down to get where you're trying to go. And it, plus that just makes the world feel more realistic, you know what I mean? Like, dungeons should feel cramped, and the dwarf home city should have tiny little doorways that are, you know, tailored to their height, and ogres aren't going to be able to fit through, you know what I mean? Rather than it being that theme park, you know, that's, you know, you can go anywhere you want easily, you know what I mean? But anyway, the flip side of that to me is now then I start wondering, are there going to be areas that small races will have a hard time reaching? Like maybe there's some like hill giant fortress that has like stairs. Exactly. The stairs are so big that like your little gnome can't climb up the stairs, and so a
You're gonna have
shaman or
spells
an
to make you
enchanter,
larger, evidently.
it may be that would, right? Like then maybe that could be like a shaman or an enchanter thing. That, you know, it's like a giant growth or enlarge spell. You know what I mean? I think that could be really interesting because I don't remember playing a game that had that side of things, but I think that could be pretty fun too.
Yeah, someone mentioned in the chat, any idea if size, race, or class will have an impact on the climbing mechanics?
I imagine it would. To what extent?
I mean,
I'm not sure.
in theory, it should. You would think a bigger race
Yeah.
could get to higher locations, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing, since you guys are talking about the size of the characters, and this is one thing that I know that's come up several times. They're trying to figure out how to deal with it, but the trolling aspect of an ogre standing in front of a door, wedging himself in there, and then no one can pass beyond that part, right?
Yeah, I mean, that gets into. I was just gonna say that gets into collision, which is kind of like a different mechanic. You know, you can still have everything else in there not be character collision.
Yeah, or maybe partial collision. They were saying like, oh, you'd only last for so long, and
yeah, that's a whole other debate that I know is going on internally and externally, and probably will continue to do so for a while. But absolutely, you know, like in MOBAs, for example, you know, the term hitbox gets thrown around because like in a MOBA, it makes sense, and these body blocks are a really important aspect of PvP. So I know a lot of advocates of PvP are in favor of character collision to, you know, kind of box people out, or it's almost kind of a form of crowd control to deny them access to a certain area or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons to that system, I would say. But
so
it would make sense that you know, a larger race like an ogre would have a bigger quote unquote hitbox, and be able to box out more area than a halfling, for example.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Going back to, I just want to touch base back on what Sacred was talking about with dungeons having places where you can log out, right? So you know what that tells me? They're designing it for a 2 to 3 hour gameplay, right? So what it tells me is these dungeons could potentially be absolutely huge and multi-layered, because I have a feeling you could spend 2 or 3 hours getting that first 1 or 2 layers done. Guess what? You got 2 more. You can't do it that night. There's your spot to camp out, pick up the next night and do it again. I think it's a great idea, because how many times in EverQuest was it such a pain to get a group again, even if it's the same group? Think about it. If you're fighting for 2 hours to clear, that means you got to leave and then do it again. Then you got to dedicate 4 hours one night just to do it over again, right? So I think that's really cool that, you know, you're going to feel, oh, there it is. You're going to feel accomplished. You're going to, you know, do the first part, and maybe you struggle. Maybe the second, as you know, you get deeper and deeper, it gets tougher, right? So maybe you camp there all week. And, you know, but again, when you die, where do you come up, right? You're probably going to come up outside somewhere, so that we don't know, but maybe people camp out a cleric there or some, you know, you start doing strategy like that. But it's interesting, something to think about. I really hope, and I know they've mentioned it before, that there's supposed to be some really big dungeons out there, and a lot of them. Sounds to me like they're going to have more dungeons than raids, which makes perfect sense. And I don't know, to me, that's exciting. That was some of my favorite parts about EverQuest, is the dungeon crawls with groups. I think that was the most fun I've had. You know, you still got to have a dynamic group. You got to have a good puller, whether it be a bard or a monk, an enchanter can pull. You know, it ties into, I had a question earlier in my chat about class specialties, right? Or classes being different than one another. So I just want to kind of dive into that real quick too, because it's always a fun subject. I think one of the things that the designers of Pantheon are really keeping into mind are each class is going to have a specific role. There goes Baz's camera. They're going to have a specific role, and they're really going to be unique. You know, they want to make it feel like no matter what class you play, you're going to have some kind of role to offer any group, right? So there's nothing worse than playing a character and then all of a sudden, you know, down the road, you're just not needed as much, right? We all don't want to fall into that hole. It happens, you know, because sometimes you're like, well, I'd much rather have an enchanter over a bard, let's say, or I'd much rather, you know, some people get passed up. I'd much rather have where you have a specialty in a class, but then there's certain classes that can kind of do the same thing. And I think that's what they're leaning for, right? Like there's going to be the best healer would probably be a cleric, but then you're going to have a druid shaman that'll have their abilities and be able to back up heal and do things. So I think no matter what class, at least I'm guessing here, but no matter what class people end up playing, you're going to find some kind of role that's going to be needed. And I really hope they come through on that. And you know what? That might spark me to try maybe a different class this time around. You know, I'm a monk or I'm an enchanter usually, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see what they bring down the road, but you know, maybe I'll be playing something different when it goes live. Who knows?
Well, not only to that point, I mean, it's one of those things too where, so let's think about it this way, in my mind at least. If I'm a cleric, you know, let's say that I'm putting out just raw healing abilities. That's great. Well, let's say we have a shaman who's able to put out some raw healing, but it's just not as great. Well, in my group as a cleric, I may not have a need for a bard. I might need an enchanter for mezzes, whatever. Don't really need extra healing or something like that. So I need an enchanter for that mezzing ability because I have all the heals in control. Well, for that shaman, they might bring a shrink, for example, to a group that I can't. So you might need them for a certain situation. You also might need a bard because you need somebody to help supplement some of those healing or the heals that you're not getting from that cleric that you don't have at that point in time. So it really allows you to kind of diversify your groups, and it really allows you to be unique. I mean, if you're a certain class, you can make a group based around your class, and you can still have all those core abilities for the most part, or maybe even a few other ones in there that you wouldn't normally have with some of those. You know, like for example, a warrior might be quote unquote the best at tanking, just raw tanking. Well, okay, great, but the other tanking classes such as a dire lord or a paladin might bring other abilities to the plate that they might need because they might not have a cleric. So they might need something that supplements a little bit more towards what a cleric would bring if they don't have one. Again, so a tank for a tank in a shaman group, a warrior might not be the best. It might be a paladin. You don't know because they might bring something to the table that helps supplement that gap that you might have from quote unquote that specialized class in that certain area. So again, I think that it allows you to really be diverse in your grouping. It allows you to really expand, try some things out, see if they work, see if they don't. There might just be points in the game where you absolutely need an enchanter because you don't have another class with that mezzing capability, with that CC capability. So it doesn't matter what you've done comp-wise, you might have to say, well, we've got to adjust to make it through this particular situation. There might be spots where you absolutely just need the raw tanking ability of a warrior in certain situations. Things like that, in my mind, make it so that even if I do have a class that has similar capabilities, I might at one point in time be the preferred, or in any case be the best role or race or class for that particular position. And then another thing, like I was just mentioning there, that comes into that is race. Size may matter. There may be certain abilities or certain benefits that certain races get that others don't, that may matter in different situations, whether it be climate, whether it be different types of environmental effects and things like that, or whether it be different types of abilities. Certain mobs might bash a lot. You might need to look into getting an org or an ogre into the group so that you can deal with that a little bit more efficiently. Things like that, again, they might allow us to really either struggle in certain situations because let's say we have the same 6 guys that go into every single dungeon every single night. We might find a dungeon that's extremely difficult for us, but then there might be another 6 guys that's a completely different comp and build that might find that dungeon very easy. I mean, in reality, they might find it's a breeze. It's a cakewalk for them. But however, there might be another dungeon right across the land there that we, on the other hand, find very easy. We can just run through it with no problem, but they struggle the entire way. So I think that's a good balance because it allows us, again, if we're really thinking about a group-centric game, I think of having like 6, 8 guys that I play with on a nightly basis that we rotate in and out a few times here or there. But, if I'm really looking at groups and dungeons, I'm going to have a core group of friends that I really like to play with. We get close together. We do a lot together. And that's the hope, at least. And then if we run into a dungeon where it's really challenging, that's something we get to struggle through together. It's not something we're going to kick somebody out of the group, go create a whole new group for. No, in my mind, I'm going to struggle through it. I'm going to say, no, we can do this. We can make this work, and we're going to find a way to make it work. It might take us twice as long, but for me, that's part of the fun of it. That's really that adventure, that struggle that, you're as a team, you're working through that. And then raids on top of that, to me, again, you add that factor where I'm talking just groups now. I'm talking just 6-mans. We add a raid into the mix, and we got a lot of different varieties in there. We got some classes and some things that we may need. We got some classes and things that may be beneficial to us, but we have to, again, look at the entire structure of that raid. Whoever's leading that raid, best of luck to them, because it's going to be a fun experience trying to coordinate all those different abilities and what you're going to need for each encounter. It's not going to be that you can have a substitute for each encounter for that particular event. You might need that exact class for that encounter at that particular time, and they might have to be on point with whatever their role is for that encounter. You as a guild leader, you need to know that and coordinate that. I think that's just going to add to the game. It's going to make it even more complex, more challenging. It's going to really, really enhance that risk factor, because no one's going to want to die when you add a little bit of meaning to death. So, again, I think it's going to be a really fun experience in that aspect, and I'm really looking forward to the group, because for me, looking at a few close friends of mine, really getting in there and playing just throughout the game, really getting to grow with them, to learn with them, to experience the game, that to me is really what I'm most excited about. I think it's going to be a blast doing that, and then throw raids in there, and it's a whole nother ballgame as well.
Baz, any comments? And then I'm going to throw a little twist into this here when you're done.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely, definitely echo everything that's been said. Like I made a few notes, like as I was reading through the article about, things that I thought of as I was just reading through the article. And as Sacred is talking, I was like, yep, we agree with that. So he's pretty much covered. We're pretty much on the same page. The only thing, though, that I think we haven't really been brought up yet was the question about mounts. And I think that's worth discussing, because I, for one, really like mounts. So I'm really glad that they're going to be in the game, but I really like what he was talking about, incorporating them kind of into the player-driven economy by using like saddlebags and stuff like that. Saddlebags is kind of a unique topic that we don't see in a whole lot of games, and hasn't even really been talked about in Pantheon a ton, because I personally think that mounts, especially like horses, should be really rare, so that they kind of have like an amount of prestige that is associated with them. And that's probably just what I'm used to from playing EverQuest, especially early in the days of EverQuest. Their horses were incredibly expensive. And so, not many people had them. And if you came across somebody that had a horse, like, you could not help but just like stand and stare at them for a little bit, you know what I mean? So I want that, but at the same time, I think you could maybe have other sorts of, like, maybe even like donkeys or like pack mules or something that are a little more common, that can be used like with these saddlebags and stuff to help you move these items across the world. I think it would be really cool to see some sort of like caravan or something, or see even these like player kind of created trade routes throughout the world that, you know, players have, you know, decided that, you know, this is a route from point A to point B that we've noticed is relatively safe passage, and maybe even these kind of community run like squads that, you know, will patrol these trade routes to make sure that they remain clear so that people can bring, you know, safe passage for their goods through this area, because, you know, some item that is common in one place of the world might be really rare and therefore valuable on the other point of that trade route, you know what I mean? And so that's that player driven economy of people wanting to turn a profit. They're willing to take the time and effort to get it from over here and take it to over there and turn around and sell it for profit. So I think that's a really interesting application of mounts, and I look forward to seeing how they implement that.
Yeah, Mike has a great point about mounts, man. It's something that's always on everyone's mind. One thing I think about in relation to mounts, I don't really care what they bring in. I'm not really a mount person. I mean, they're cool. I like the idea about the saddlebags and mules and things like that, where it's useful, it's a utility. But one thing they have said over and over is they're going to make travel meaningful. It has to directly tie in with the scale of the world that makes the world feel big. When you know what, people might bitch about it. They might go, God dang it, I got to go all the way over this summit or whatever it ends up being. But you know what, when they do it and they reflect back on it, you go, that was a memory. That was, you know, look what I encountered along the way. Or it adds scale. When you sit there and have the ability to just blink somewhere, you bypass so much content, right? So one thing they did say is, even if you have land mounts and that are quick, you're going to have to usually get to that location first anyway. So you would have seen the world. It's not like you're bypassing content. So I think they're going to be on the right track there. I think if they do mounts and the way they're going to introduce them, I think it's going to be very well done. So guys, we're about 10 minutes away from an hour, right? So got about 10 minutes left. If we really wanted to hit our goal, we'd still want to probably take some questions. I've got a few in my chat, but one thing I wanted to just kind of throw a twist, and no, Baz, I'm not going to ask you to play the guitar.
Yeah.
But that would be pretty cool. But that would be pretty cool.
Maybe another day with more heads up.
I bet you're pretty good. Anyway, so one thing I wanted to bring up, and this is what's fun about these kind of things, because you sit there and you reflect and you think about things. So here's something I want to throw at both of you, and just to think about this, right? Just think about it for a second. You were younger when EverQuest affected you. We know that. But maybe it still affected you in the same way. So the one thing I haven't experienced in a long time is missing a game while I'm at work, missing a game when you're somewhere else. Have you ever had that? I mean, that's the feeling. It's been gone, right? But it's almost like you're not in that world, you're missing out. Isn't that cool? I mean, isn't that what they're trying to create? And I think the key element there is a dynamic world. You feel like if you're not logged in, you're missing out. And I think that's what they're really going to create, right? I think there's going to be rare mobs. There's going to be things that are happening. You know, groups are going to be discovering things. Maybe you got to work on your acclamations. There's going to be things that you just feel like you're missing out on, or maybe you miss a day and you know your group's going to go hit this one area and you really wanted to be there. And I think that's what's missing. And I really want to have a game where it might not be healthy because it distracts from work, right? But I want to be laying there at night thinking about. I mean, I remember laying there at night just thinking about all the stuff I wanted to do, or I still wanted to be at East Commons Tunnel because I didn't find my item, you know, or just there's all these reasons, right, to pull you into the world, including your friends. So anyway, my question to you guys is, give me a couple examples. You don't need to go super long about it, but a couple examples that EverQuest had that affected you in that way. I'll give you one. One that killed me was my Epic Quest. I was so into, because it was so long. And if you all don't, you know, people in my chat or your chats haven't experienced Epic Quest, because you don't see them like that in other games. There are these quests that go on and on and on. And you got to find parts that only drop from rare mobs. And keep in mind, when we say rare mobs, we're talking rare mobs. You know, it's not like, I mean, some of these mobs pop like once a week and things like, I don't think it's going to be that extreme. Okay. But they are going to be rare. They're not going to pop every 5 minutes for you and you know, basically hand it to you. So anyway, mine was Epic Quest. I just loved it. I loved every bit about it, trying to earn it, trying to get it. And I hated those people that got it before me, because they'd stand around and, you know, it'd be shiny and have all this animations and stuff. And I wanted to get it myself. And anyway, that was one of the things that always wanted to get me back in the game, try to get that opportunity. But if you guys don't mind, just maybe 1 or 2 points of a dynamic, what is it about a game that you miss while you're somewhere else?
Well, so boys, all right, here we go. So for me, I can think back to, it was Crystal Caverns, actually. And I remember there was some, gem collectors there that I used to farm, and I would go sell gems, and that was kind of how I made some money. Well, I remember it got hot for a while, and every time I logged off, I'd log in, and I'd have to wait like 2 or 3 hours for the guy that was farming these gem collectors to leave so I could go back to farming my gem collectors. And I mean, that was the type of thing where I was respectful. I was like, all right, man, you know, you got it. It's all you. But as soon as you leave, I'm right here waiting. And I would literally wait for hours. So every time I got off the game, I was like, am I sure I can't just play a few more hours? Because I know I'm not going to be able to get that back, or I'm going to lose it potentially and not even be able to get, you know, maybe the person that's there is going to be there all night the next night. Or again, I loved trading in EverQuest, sitting at East Commons, having some of them items hit the market or get you know, shouted out. And I'm like, oh, I need that. I've got to get that. Or trying to buy one, and you're there all day long, and you're like, man, I know if I log off, that guy's going to come here and he's going to sell it to somebody as soon as I log off. And I can probably stay another 30 minutes. And then if I'm not there, you know, I get on the next day and one of my friends says, oh man, someone actually sold that yesterday for half the price you were looking to buy it for. And it's like, man, if I would, you know, again, it felt like when I was off, I was missing something. And I love that. You know, I love the fact that things were happening. And when I got off, people were telling me about them. People would, you know, let me know, oh, you missed this. Oh, you should have seen this. And I'm like, oh man, you know, but then it was the same for me too. Those friends would get on later that day, and I'm like, man, you should have been here. I stayed home sick from school and played all day. You should have seen what happened. And, you know, that was the type of, you know, thing that it was exciting to me, because it wasn't like, oh, let's just go do it again and I'll show you what I'm talking about. It was like, no. You have to wait like probably a week, 2 weeks. You might get lucky and see it next month. Like, it wasn't something that was small. It was actually a big event that took time, took effort, you know, and that was fun. That actually put some value in me playing and me coming back. And like you said, when I was not on the game, I thought about it. I missed it. I was like, what do I need to do to accomplish what I want to accomplish when I get on? Because it wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be quick. And I needed to make sure that I was mentally ready and I had all my homework done. So as soon as I logged into the game, I was able to just get right at it. So that's...
Yeah, 5 minutes is not nearly enough time for me to fully explain the impact that EverQuest has had on my mind. Because, like I said, as a 5-year-old, it's like it's so hard to describe how, when I was still even getting used to like the real world, to then, you know, then get sucked into an entire different world of Norath, you know, like it just consumed my brain in every way possible. You know, so and actually, like when I was first starting out, I was only able to play the game at my grandmother's house, like on her account. My first character was on her account, because nobody's gonna pay $15 a month for a 5-year-old to have his own account. So I was playing on her account, and I could only really go there like on the weekends, you know. And so like literally every day that I was not at her house playing EverQuest, I was just thinking about it. And now in those, you know, again, as a 5-year-old, I'm not very focused in the game. Like I'm not doing epic quests as a 5-year-old, but it's still, it's just that, it's that mindset of just, you know, in every way trying to just be back in that world, just in my mind. So even, you know, when I'm at home, just, you know, playing as a, you know, 5, 6, 7-year-old kid, like kids do, I'm, you know, playing with Legos, but I'm playing with my Legos as if they were EverQuest characters, you know what I mean? So I would like try to like recreate Crushbone like out of Legos, and have my little character go through it and kill orcs, and, you know, it just like everything would just revolved around EverQuest just as a little kid. And it's something that you know, if you didn't experience that firsthand as a little kid, it's probably really hard to understand, but it forever had like an impact just on the way that I think. So it's like it sounds silly, man, but it's like it when yeah, when you have that sense of wonder as all kids do, and then to discover Norath, which was, you know, struck awe in even adults. It's like there was nothing else like it.
Good points. A couple things I wanted to say on some things you said there is, you know, when it comes to slow leveling, okay, why, you know, some people look at that as like, ah, that's just grind, it's a waste of time. Well, no, think about it this way. Think about it this way. If it takes you longer to level and you have enough content to satisfy that level, you're going to see more of the world, and you're not going to think about leveling as much. You're going to think more about experiencing the world. And an example is, think about back in EverQuest, let's say around level 12, okay? 10, somewhere in there. You go to orc camps, right? You go to West Commons, you go to orc camps, you go here, you go to East Commons, you go to, you know, orc camps there, right? You get that satisfied. And then you go to the North Row, right? Or the desert there. You start doing things there, right? Maybe you go across the continent and you do things over there in Butcher Block. My point is, it lasted long enough where it allowed you to literally see all parts of the world, and you didn't just all of a sudden go to level 20 and bypass the whole continent altogether. I think there's a lot to be said in that, and that's something I want everyone to think about when a lot of us ask for slower leveling, and that's why we're asking. We want the game to last. You know, we want you to. There's going to be contested content, right? So you're not going to get that same orc camp, you know, wherever it may be. You're not going to get the same camp. So you're going to, guess what? You're going to pick up and you're going to travel and you're going to go places, and you might discover somewhere new, all because you're still around that same level and you haven't bypassed the content. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of point that out. I really hope they slow it down and give us time to experience a lot of this first time around, especially, right? Or maybe in a progeny second time around, right? Because you're not going to be able to rush through it. Anyway, just some comments there that I thought about when you were talking about that. At this point, guys, do you have any questions in your chat that you want to bring up?
No, my chat talks about beer and yeah.
What's your favorite beer?
Oh, me? It depends on the night, but usually Corona. So
Corona guy, huh? Do you throw lime and salt in it?
No. I don't need none of that.
Hey, so I did get a question in chat about, and it's to both of you. What is the number one thing you're looking? If you got to pick just one thing, okay, guys, one thing that you're looking forward to in Pantheon. Baz?
That's such a tough question. I think probably wow. I was unprepared for that. I'd say the
Or
climate.
Sacred, if you know, we could let him think about it.
No, I got an answer. I'd say the climate system, because that is something that I feel like has been missing out of MMORPGs basically since MMORPGs have been a thing. There hasn't really been enough dynamic that really has an impact on gameplay. And I think I'm just really looking forward to sitting down and really analyzing that system and how it works, and how to counteract it, so that I can adventure more effectively. And I think that process of realizing, I'm in this icy area and my character is literally cold and freezing, and I need to bundle up in like fur clothing, to counteract that. I think that when that moment when you realize that just makes it so much more real, and just brings the game to a whole new level. You know what I mean? It's just a completely new aspect of adventuring. So I'd say that's at least the mechanic that I am most excited about.
That's actually mine too. So spot on there. Sacred.
Well, I'll go a little different. I love the climate system that they're trying to put in place. I mean, I gotta be honest with you, the clouds that we see in the streams, I'm blown away every time I see them. I love what they've done with the lighting, the clouds, the shades, everything like that. I think that it's just coming together beautifully. So I'm excited to see how the climate system and how they put the graphics together with that all come together as one. But I'll go a little different route. So you talk about slower leveling. One of the things that I'm most excited about in the game is the perception system, and is for that fact that I might be exploring that nook and cranny that's in the corner of some obscure random location, and all of a sudden I get hit by some sort of perception that leads me down some other path, and that I'd never even would have imagined was there. So again, the perception system in the game just being something that's just there in the background, constantly working, and just a part of the game for me. I'm excited about that because, again, that's just something that's going to bring me farther into that game, deeper into that game, something I'm going to be continuing to get excited about every time I go out, explore, do quests, do dungeons, do raids, whatever it is. There's always a possibility that I'll run into something, find something that I never quite expected I was going to, that changes the course of my night. It might have been a rough night up until something, came to me, and then all of a sudden now I'm on another adventure that I'm excited about. I could have been just grinding out a camp, and now all of a sudden something caught my eye. I went to look at it, investigated it, and all of a sudden now I'm off that camp. I'm onto a path down the road. I'm on another journey and adventure. I'm doing something that, again, just I didn't expect, but that just drew me into the game, really took me by surprise, completed that feeling of immersion into the game, and really just made it kind of whole, a unique experience overall. So that's my big thing. If it has to come down to one mechanic, I'm really excited about perception and what they're looking to do with it.
And I'm not just saying this; those are my top two. Hey, they're the things that are different.
No, I'd agree. It's so hard. It's so hard to just pick one thing. Like, I mean, if I had to pick a second, I would say the disposition system too, because that adds a whole new layer of combat too. There's just so many things, man. I can't pick just one.
See, everybody, this is such a great game, man. That's why you get involved. Someone had brought up so Nolvu, he goes by Nolvus and Twitch, but he's one of our officers at TDC, and he's a huge crafter, right? So he just brought an interesting thing up when you were talking about perception, and I will bet on this. Well, no, I'm not going to go that route, but I'm pretty confident that what he's saying is going to happen. So he's a big crafter, right? He's hoping that perception ties in with the crafting skill. Like the more you build up your perception, that it's only going to apply to maybe a certain, I don't know if they can break it down by a certain type of crafter, but I think that's pretty cool. They've already said it's going to be class specific, right? Or race specific, or, tying along those lines, or maybe down the road, a cleric. Remember they talked about maybe branching into a specialty or something. Again, none of this is concrete. They've mentioned it before. So maybe if you branch a certain way as a cleric, you get a different perception as if you go the other way. So I think it's pretty cool. Maybe it's going to tie into crafting. Maybe it's going to tie into other activities and stuff. That is pretty cool, because then you never know what you're going to get, right? So to answer your question, though, I think you're going to get what you're looking for there. So guys,
I would agree with that.
guys, I want to say, first of all, thanks for your time. And I really think we dissected this interview pretty well. I think we covered a lot, pretty much everything on my checklist.
I think we hit everything. I think we nailed it.
Yeah, so it was a good stream. We're pretty much right on time. So we'll go ahead and unless there's any just hardcore questions that have got to be answered, and plus your camera's going out again, so that's good timing. So anyway, guys, I just want to thank you for your time. Great information tonight. It's always a pleasure. And I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to try to sneak this in. Maybe we can do one of these about crafting in the future, okay? Just throwing it out there. Nothing but crafting theories, ideas, blah, 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 blah. Down the road, okay? Maybe once they give a little bit of stuff to chew on that might have some facts behind it. So just keep that in mind if you guys are interested. I know I can tell you there's a lot of people in TDC and in some of my community that are just huge crafting guys, so, and girls. So on that note, if you guys have anything else to say it now. Otherwise, I appreciate your time tonight. Hopefully everyone had a great time, and for sure we're going to be doing this again.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, everybody. You're free to go play guitar, Baz, and Sacred, you go take care. Go slam a Corona and take care of that voice of yours.
Later, guys.
See ya.
See you guys.